What if the very children you sacrificed everything for were the ones to destroy you? For 40 years, my life was a collage of finger paintings, the smell of chalk dust, and the proud, gap-toothed smiles of second graders. I packed 1,000 school lunches, kissed 100 scraped knees, and sewed more than a few lopsided Halloween costumes. With every single paycheck, a small piece went straight into my 401k. That 401k, my small teacher's pension, and my Social Security, that was my foundation. My dream wasn't about yachts. It was about peace. It was the rich smell of damp earth in the garden I'd finally have time for. It was the scent of a pot roast filling the house for a Sunday dinner that didn't end with me grading papers. It was the cool, metallic feel of the porch swing chains in my hands as I lost myself in a book. The gentle creak my husband built into it with his own 2 hands. It was the sound of my grandkids' laughter echoing off the walls, the pitter-patter of feet running through a home I could finally fly them to for their birthdays, without that knot of anxiety about the cost. It was a life of quiet dignity, security, and at the heart of that dream were John and Sarah. John, my serious boy, got a job in finance. Sarah, my bright girl, became a paralegal. When I retired, they threw me a party. John raised his glass. To my mom, you've taken care of everyone your whole life. Now, it's our turn to take care of you. I looked at my successful, caring children, and my heart swelled. They were my greatest achievement. I was about to hand the keys to the fortress to the 2 people I knew would guard it with their lives. But I had no idea they were already sharpening the knives. The trust I placed in them that day would become their most powerful weapon. It all started so innocently. A bad bout of pneumonia left me weak, and the mail just piled up. A blizzard of fine print that made my head spin. Why could I manage a classroom of 30 kids, but not this? John and Sarah saw the panic on my face. "Mom, this is too much," John said gently. Sarah added, "We can help. It's just for peace of mind." It felt like a prayer being answered. John explained what a power of attorney was. Not to take anything away, he said, but to help if I needed it. A safety net. Then came adding them to my bank accounts. "It's just for convenience, Mom," Sarah explained. "If a bill needs paying online, we can just do it instantly." Relief washed over me. A week later, Sarah arrived with documents she'd prepared. "Saves you money on a lawyer, Mom," she smiled. A tiny voice, maybe my own mother's, whispered, "Shouldn't my own lawyer look at this?" I pushed it away. To question them would be an insult. "Please, don't make my mistake. Don't hand over your keys without protection." I signed where she pointed. As I signed the bank forms, I looked up from the page. I can still see her little face, 5 years old, her hand in mine as she promised to never tell a lie. "So this just means you can help me pay bills, right?" John barely glanced up from his phone. "Mom, being a co-signer means we're all equal owners. It's just the cleanest way to do it." I didn't understand the legal chasm between helper and co-owner. I just heard cleanest. Simple. So grateful I signed. I had just willingly built the cage, thinking it was a fortress, and handed them the only key. But that was only the first crack in the foundation. For a few months, everything was perfect. Bills were paid. John would call with smart-sounding updates. "Don't worry about the mail, Mom," they said. "We're screening it for scams." And I let them. The red flags started small. The bank statements stopped coming. "We switched you to paperless, Mom," John said smoothly. "It's more secure." A door clicked shut. Then I got a call from a charity I'd donated $25 to for years. "Ma'am, thank you for your generous $500 donation." When I asked Sarah, she laughed it off. "Oh, that was me." "With inflation, I figured you'd want to give more." She hadn't asked. A strange feeling settled in my stomach. I always gave carefully, within my means. She made me feel foolish for my own frugality. The real chill came when I planned a trip with friends. I called John. There was a pause. "A trip, Mom?" "The market's choppy. Better to stay close to home." It felt like a command. My money, my retirement, and I was being told no. I buried my anger. He knows best. What would you have done? The phone calls became less frequent. When I'd ask about my investments, John would say, "Everything's fine, Mom. Don't you worry your pretty little head about it," a phrase so condescending it made me flinch. They started talking about me to each other while I was right there. "She seems a little confused today," Sarah would whisper to John, loudly enough for me to hear. They were building a narrative, brick by brick, a story where I was incompetent. The help was starting to feel less like a support and more like a cage. The silence on the phone would soon become unbearable. The world shattered on a Tuesday. At a Walgreens. The total for my blood pressure prescription was $47. I handed the cashier my debit card. She slid it again. "I'm sorry," she said, her voice a low murmur, offering a tight, forced smile that didn't reach her eyes. "It's been declined." Heat flooded my face. The man behind me sighed audibly. I felt the eyes of the entire store on me, shoppers whispering. "That's impossible," I stammered, my voice thin. "Declined again," she said, already looking past me. "Do you have another way to pay?" I drove straight to the bank. The branch manager led me to her office. She typed. Her face tightened. She turned the screen towards me. My fingers went numb. My knees felt weak. I saw my name, my account number, and the balance. $7.21. My heart stopped. $7. The printer began to spool out the statements, the sound like a death rattle. Page after page, each one a stab wound. It started small. 5,000, then 10, and then a single wire transfer 6 weeks ago. $273,000. Gone. I sat at my kitchen table and dialed John's number. Voicemail. I called Sarah. Disconnected. Finally, John answered, his voice sharp. "What, Mom?" "I'm busy." "The money, John," I gasped. "The bank. It's all gone." And there it was, that terrible deep silence, the silence of guilt. When he finally spoke, his voice was ice. "It wasn't all gone, Mom. It was invested." In that moment, I saw him as a boy in his superhero costume, vowing to protect me. Then the vision shattered. "Invested?" John. That was my life savings. "And we are your retirement," he snapped. "We had debts. A business opportunity. A sure thing. You would have said no. We did what was necessary. Could you imagine your own children saying this to you?" "You stole from me," I whispered. "Don't be so dramatic," he scoffed. "We were just borrowing against our inheritance." You have Social Security. You'll be fine." Then he hung up. They didn't just take my money. They had made their move. Now it was time for me to make mine. The days that followed were a blur of grief so profound it felt like a physical illness. Was any of their love real? The shame was a burn on my skin when the eviction notice was taped to my front door. They hadn't paid the mortgage. I had to sell everything. Not just furniture, but memories. I stood there numb as a stranger offered $20 for my husband's armchair. Then another bought the cedar chest where I'd carefully stored Sarah's wedding dress, hoping to one day give it to a granddaughter. It felt like I was selling pieces of my own ghost. My life became a frantic calculation in a small, bleak apartment. I became a prisoner of shame. When an old friend from church called to invite me to our weekly lunch group, I lied. "Oh, I'm just so busy downsizing," I said, the words tasting like ash. Wanted a simpler life. I couldn't afford a simple lunch, and I couldn't bear their pity. Sometimes, in the dead of night, I'd open a photo album, only to slam it shut. I couldn't look at their smiling faces anymore. But in those darkest hours, a tiny ember of anger began to glow. They had underestimated their own mother. A friend from my old church group gave me the number for a legal aid society. That call and the support of women like her who refused to let me disappear changed everything. I met a young attorney named Ms. Davis. I told her the whole ugly story. She looked me in the eye and said, "What they did is not just a family matter. It is a crime. It's called elder financial abuse, and we are going to fight it." Facing them in a deposition was the hardest thing I've ever done. Miss Davis was relentless. She held up a bank statement. "On this date," she said, her voice like ice, "you told your mother you were moving her money to a safer fund. Yet on that same day, you wired $50,000 to a luxury car dealership. Was that safer for your mother's retirement, Mr. Henderson?" John stammered, "Well, the market is complex, you see. It was a holding." Sarah just stared at the table. Under oath, their lies crumbled. The outcome wasn't a Hollywood ending. Much of my money was gone. But the judge voided the sale of my house. And then she looked directly at me. Her gaze wasn't one of pity, but of respect. It felt like a blessing. In that moment, as she spoke the ruling, the weight of shame lifted. In a court of law, a judge saw not a confused old woman, but a victim. And she saw my children for what they were. I didn't get all my money back. I got my dignity back. If my story feels terrifyingly possible, it's because it is. If I had known about the resources available sooner, my story would be different. Don't wait until it's too late. Please, go to the websites for the National Adult Protective Services Association and the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. The links are below. If you suspect that you or someone you love is a victim, do not let shame keep you silent. Reach out to your local adult protective services or an elder law attorney. Your security is non-negotiable. It is worth the fight. My life today isn't the one I dreamed of. The relationship with my children is now a crater of silence. Not the quiet, peaceful silence I longed for, but the cold, dead silence of permanent loss. There is no coming back from this. I made 2 critical mistakes. First, I put convenience ahead of security. A power of attorney gives help. A joint account gives ownership. Know the difference? Second, I trusted blindly. I assumed love was armor enough. It isn't. So if you take anything from my story, promise me this. Be the CEO of your own retirement. Ask the hard questions. Read every line. Never give anyone, not even the children you adore, unchecked control. Secrecy is the soil where this kind of evil grows. They took my nest egg. But standing here today, on the porch of the home I fought to get back, watering the small rose pots on my balcony, I am still here. My story is not just a tale of loss. It's a warning. They thought they could leave me in that terrible silence, but I have turned it into my voice. They wrote a chapter of my life, but I am the one who gets to write the ending. Watch this next for another gripping tale of retirement gone wrong, plus the lesson you can't afford to miss.